In the studios here with me, I have Dr. Tony Adeyemi, who is a public health physician. Thank you for your time.
Thank you
Thank you
for
for
having
coming
me,
in
Mr.
again.
Ladi.
Now treatments. We've talked about a number of other things, but now this, I don't know whether to call it vexed issue of treatments. Nothing has been approved formally yet, but we're treating people and they are recovering. I don't know how possible it is to keep them quiet about what it is that was being used to treat them. How do you think we can approach this issue of treatment best without breaching patient confidentiality, but at the same time reassuring people that you have COVID-19 does not mean you're going to die?
All right, thank you. I think the first thing to actually emphasize to the general public is that coronavirus infection is a viral infection. And most times, viral infections are self-limiting, meaning they run their course, and after a while, the patient recovers. After a while, the virus becomes undetectable in the blood. That's why you can now have a negative result after a while. So clinical trials are going on. There are different phases of these clinical trials. We've heard of the WHO Solidarity trial, which is going on. So in the phase 2 of the trial, you initially test the drug among a few patients. Then you now move on to the most important, which is phase 3, where you have the randomized control trial. In the randomized control trial, is actually like an experiment. So you divide the patients into two. You have the control group and you have the test group. The test group are actually the ones that receive the trial drugs, but they do not know that they are receiving the trial drugs. Even the investigator does not know. That's the process called double blinding, so that you can avoid bias as much as possible. So even the patients are not aware. So most times they give them unmarked drugs, so you don't know if you're taking hydroxychloroquine, if you are taking remdesivir or whatever, you don't know what drug you're taking. So that's the process of randomized control trial, such that at the end of the day, you can now compare results and know how effective your treatment is. And thankfully, the Director of Public Health, which we spoke to in Abuja, also mentioned some of the setbacks which could occur when some of these drugs are actually released into the public, because you could have people self-medicating, you could have people also making these drugs also and trying to sell to the public. And phase 4 of the drug is when you actually know how safe this drug is, the long-term effects, the adverse effects of these drugs. So we all need to be careful. We need to be patient and wait for the results of the clinical trials to actually come out before we can now authoritatively say that this is the cure or this is a treatment for coronavirus infection.
People are worried because a number of predictions. Yesterday, the WHO said, look, if it goes uncurtailed in Africa, the numbers who dying could reach 190,000. Today, the Lagos State government, through its Commissioner for Health, says, look, in Lagos alone, we could have 120,000 people by July. Not dying, but having COVID-19.
Yeah.
Now, against that backdrop, one can understand why there is anxiety over treatment. Now, would you make a case, just like I asked you, Dr. Balogo, would you make a case for a look at indigenous treatments?
Oh, yes, most definitely, because coronavirus infection comes with different symptoms. And some of the local remedies that we have been seeing out that have even actually gone through formal channels, like rights to the Federal Ministry of Health, straight to NAFDAC, we've seen some of them. There are things that actually take care of some of the presentations of coronavirus infection, the symptoms like the dry cough, the sore throat. So there are things that have been known right from time to take care of these things. So it's good to look at indigenous methods, but they still need to be validated. So they still need to go through the right channel. These trials still need to be conducted such that there are safety levels, because in phase 2 of any drug trial, you try and get the dose response curve. At that point in time, you're looking for the exact dose that will bring you the results, desired outcome that you need. But if you prescribe or talk about these medications without any scientific method, people can overdose on it. It could have toxic effects on the liver, on the kidney, and so on. So that's why these drugs, however being indigenous, have to go through right channels, but won't totally discard them. They are welcome, but they should be validated properly and through the right bodies.
Now, the remdesivir, I hope I got that right, because it's a new. The major advantage it is said to have is that it reduces recovery time. So
Yes.
that means that people don't have to occupy bed spaces
space
in
for a long
isolation.
time.
Now, some people will say that's a perfect fit for our own situation, because even today, the Director General of the NCDC was saying, look, now we have 3,500 cases. That's already in excess of our capacity. And for some predictions, we are just beginning. How do we go about using something like that, even though it is still going through the process of validation, if indeed we are to use such a thing?
Okay, but as already explained, we're in an emergency situation right now. It's a pandemic that is going on. That's why even the Solidarity Trial by the World Health Organization, they've been able to bypass in a positive way, not bypass in a negative way. They've been able to bypass some of the rigid protocols that they need to go through before a randomized control trial can actually be carried out. So I'm sure that even currently here in Nigeria, these drugs, because Nigeria is part of the countries that are participating in the Solidarity Trial. So some of these drugs are already being tested and being used already. That might also be why we're having, but we cannot conclude yet. We only have a hypothesis that we have formulated, but these hypotheses need to be correctly tested and statistically proven to be sure that it's efficacious. On the other hand, our bed occupancy rates, we're having so many people now, we do not have enough space. So Nigeria is tilting gradually towards the home treatment of coronavirus infection. So we need to be sensitizing people more, because we are going to get there pretty soon. Fine, we can build more isolation centers around Nigeria, but it's going to come to a point where asymptomatic cases or mild cases can actually stay at home and get better. And that's where traditional and home remedies might actually come into play, because by the time they've been validated to a reasonable extent, and you know that, okay, I'm asymptomatic, but I just have an itchy throat, or I just have a dry cough, then this is all I need to take to feel better. So there's actually a place that goes back to your previous question on the local remedies and home treatment for coronavirus infection.
Finally, and very briefly, let me ask you about the fact that now that we are easing the lockdown, some of the health authorities are reporting that it's getting more and more difficult to get people to come in for testing and to follow on contacts and so on, because you can hardly find anybody at home anymore. Did we do this too soon, you think?
Well, we had 5 weeks, because the aim of the lockdown in itself was not to automatically flatten the curve. It was to put strategies in place such that we have a framework, we have a way to trace people, we have a way to identify the contacts of confirmed cases. We have a way of also confirming cases. So it gave us adequate time to put some of the structures in place. If we had more time, that would also have been a plus and a benefit. But then, we had to weigh the economic benefits of the lockdown and all, and put everything exactly. So it gave us just an adequate time to try and put some of these strategies in place, because we already have Nigerians coming back. We have where they're going to quarantine them. So some of these structures, it's already taking shape. So it was actually a good thing that we had to lock down then.
Dr. Tony Adeyemi, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.